I think for me, the challenge would be like, who's benefiting? So if you're borrowing references, let's say from, as you mentioned, from like the weave techniques in Ethiopia, and then it's woven in China, then that just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
That's that. I'm like, no, then at least it should have been made there. And therefore, the communities that actually are known for that technique are actually benefiting from it, because that is why it is something of interest to you. Because somebody in Ethiopia made it. So don't then go and replicate it and then sell it as something that should be but isn't.
Yeah.
So I'm okay when the people who originated it benefited from the creation. Yeah.
This is Selam Hello, where stories of joy and justice vibrate with the rhythm of Africa and the diaspora.
We're worried, anxious group of people trying to move along. Maybe one day we'll get onto something.
Salam hello, everyone. My name is Bekele-Piper, and as always, I'm so glad that you've tuned in today. In these many years that I've been in Nairobi, one of the things that I love the most is the beautiful fashion, creative arts, music industry. I mean, Nairobi is vibing. Kenya as a whole is bustling with creative energy. And wherever you look, you can find inspiration. You can find the traditional clothes that we've always worn, merging with modern ideas. And one of the leading voices in that cultural and traditional and fashion revolution is the brand Katush Nairobi. And behind that brand is the one and only Katungulu Mwendwa, who is the founder and creative visionary behind Katush Nairobi. Katush's brand first came to me when I was prepping for an interview with Zimbabwean author Tsitsi Tangarengwa, and I wanted something beautiful to wear. So a friend of mine gave me a gift card, and we went to a local place, African Lifestyles Hub, and I was like, let me just look for something outstanding. And she pulled this red, beautiful dress, if I do say so myself, off the rack and said, this is it. And I was like, you're 1,000% right. And I was thrilled when I looked at the label and it was Katush, because I have been admiring her work, watching it from afar. And today when she walked in, we realized actually we have met and we have mutual friends in common. And so it's just a double joy to know that not only am I an admirer of her admirer of her work and a fan, but that our worlds have overlapped through other creative visionaries in this city. So shout out to Nali and Sam, who have brought us together many, many years ago. But Katush's brand has just continued to rise and inspire all of us here who are watching her incredible work unfold on the global stage, whether it's Paris Fashion Week or Lagos Fashion Week, whether it's New York Fashion Week, or she's exhibiting in Portugal or Mozambique. You see in her work this beautiful vision of embracing traditional craftsmanship and artistry with modern lines and designs that just speak volumes about what is possible in the future of African fashion. Her latest collection I just love because she has these earthy tones with splashes of blue that bring to mind the Kenyan sky for me. And when you read her bio and read about what she is aspiring to do and the stories that she wants to tell, and you look at her fashion, it's all there. The stories of Kenya, the stories of female identity, the stories of Africa's opulent heritage, as it says on her website, the curiosity that she has for the human expression and the human form. And so it is just such a joy today to have one of Africa's leading voices of fashion with us today to talk about her creative work, her journey, and what she might envision for the future of fashion here in the continent. So, Katush, it is such a joy to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And looking good, by the way.
Asante.
We're both in Katush today, which is a joy. I need to get another one and expand my wardrobe. Let's start by just hearing a little bit about your creative journey. You have been creating for many years. So give us the highlights of your path into this world.
I think that's an interesting one. Maybe to start with, I come from a creative background. My father's an architect. He's also a bass guitarist. So between the creative arts and music, I was never, even growing up, I was never sure which one I'd pursue. But it meant that similarly, his siblings were also in similar fields. I think we have 3 architects out of the 3 of them. They're only 4. And their mother, my late grandmother, was in crafts work. So she worked with artisans in our hometown, which meant that our weekends, even in Nairobi, our weekends were spent at her workshop, either beading, weaving, leatherwork, pottery. I mean, summer it was just one of those things where we got to experiment and to immerse ourselves in that world of crafts. And that sort of encouraged me or drew me towards what I do now, which is mostly about working with my hands. Yeah. So that's probably the beginning.
Well, it's such a humble way to say it, just working with your hands, because certainly the work of your hands has traveled the globe. You know, we've seen your work in Vogue France. We've seen it on the runways in New York. So when you, in this creative family, being inspired and introduced to all these different art forms, at what point did you think, this is how I'm going to actually make my living? And what were the steps you took to get there?
I think it came, so I studied in Nairobi and I was doing my O-level. When you're doing O-level art, they ask you to sort of pick a topic. Or like, so you don't just do art in its entirety. It's like pick a focus. And I was like, okay, which one do I want to do? And I already knew from that I wanted to work with my hands. And I was thinking to myself, which medium will allow me, what art form will allow me to experiment with the most mediums? And I was like, somehow fashion seemed to be like the one that would allow me to draw, paint, weave, all of those things. Or that's how I assumed I could do it, which is, I think, the ideology I've had in the industry. So I focused on fashion at that particular point. And I've never turned back. That
was it.
Yeah, it was it. I was like, wait, this is kind of me.
Well, and what you said about fashion being art is so true. I think anyone who knows your work and then maybe starts to stop and look around at other people, your peers, it is art. This blending of tradition, culture, patterns, lines, textures, it is a work of art. And when you think about your creative vision, something that you talk about, at least, in some of what I read about you, is that you have a real commitment to embracing the traditions, but then bringing them into modernity. So tell me a little bit about how your ethos around Katush evolved.
I think it started when I think that question of what it means to be Kenyan, and that's one of the first times that I got into universities, the time I realized people wanted to know what being Kenyan was like. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to explain that to you.
Yeah.
And so it took me down this journey of like, what does that really mean? Being Kenyan. And I'm like, so I wrote this list and I was like, I had Ugali, I had Taska. It's a very
Kenyan things.
Yeah, they're very Kenyan things. But it was like I feel like it's so hard to explain what it's like to be Kenyan. And it's because I think a lot of our cultural references are not present in our day-to-day life. When you look at it just from the outskirts, you'll be like, oh, but it's like any other urban city in the world.
Yeah.
But there's so many other nuances, but I guess you have to immerse yourself in them to realize them. And so then I was like, okay, why is this the case? And what could I do to sort of try and explain this journey? And I was very determined at that particular point. I was like, it's either this or that. So now I'm very different, slightly. But it was like, is it because maybe the interference of colonialism and therefore a lot of our traditional practices are not there anymore? So I tried to ask myself, if we were allowed to evolve naturally, what would that look like? What would that natural progression look like aesthetically?
Yeah.
And so I was really stuck on that. I was like, okay, fine. So where do I begin? Who do I ask? Or like, where are my references?
Yeah.
And I went on this like journey of trying to explore and find all of this information and resources. And I was like, I'm not finding anything, or at least I felt like I couldn't find what I wanted or what I thought I needed to sort of bring it to light. So I think the next best step was to look at other references from other communities on the continent, because their imagery, their resources were much easier to find, I felt, at that particular point. So you find me referencing Dinka corsetry or the Wadabe. And it's because there was so much information about them, I think, at that particular point that I had access to. So I'd do that and I'd be like, okay, so what would it look like in a more urban or modern setting?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what has influenced different pieces or collections throughout. that sort of ideology.
Do you remember your first designs where you feel like, yeah, this is, so you have these influences and you want to bring them into the urban setting? You're like, this is, do you remember what that first design looked like? Can you take us there?
The first, I don't know how to even do it. The first one I remember from university was a post-apocalyptic Tuareg-inspired collection. And it was like all of these beautiful drapey silhouettes, like soft structures, at the same time, just quite, can't even explain, quite architectural at the same time, because I juxtaposed the two ideas and I was like, okay, fine, this is very cool. And then I was like, but it's not very functional. But in my head, I was also answering a question of, imagine in a post-apocalyptic world, I don't know what has happened, and therefore humans have evolved differently. So it was functional to the humans of that time.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I approached that view. And then I remember thinking, but then a lot of African communities, we have very major roles. And so I also developed the collections based on characters. Like you had the like medicines, or like so the doctors, you had the warriors. So I had all these different characters that I developed or evolved around that sort of concept. And I think some of that has still stuck in my modern or newer collections. But yeah, that was the beginning. Yeah.
So I'm wearing a red, would you call this a kaftan?
It's the Haweta Bubu.
Haweta Bubu. I did not know the name, but now I know. So tell me, is there a story, is there a character behind this piece in particular?
Yeah, so this actually started even from that point. So it does come from the Tuareg, that collection, but it also met the Dinka translation somehow. So this piece has evolved in many ways. So the Dinka translation is where you'll see a lot of my pieces have a line straight down the back.
Yes.
And it's borrowing from the Dinka corsage that is usually worn by men, but now also women. So you'll find it has a straight, there's a thing it does at the back, you'll see it at the back.
Yeah, okay.
And that's borrowing from various collections, and it became the seasonless one. But it was also because one day I was wearing a dira in the house, and my mom has many sisters, so I have many mothers. And I was very comfortable. I was enjoying my life, and they're like, child, when we visit you, please put in more of an effort.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make myself one of those diras that when you come home, you'll never have this statement again. So this is an amalgamation of thoughts.
Beautiful, dear, because we have a similar thing in Ethiopia too. We call diria, and you tuck it into the underpants and you just go about your day. Yeah. This is elegant.
You see?
This is elegant, yes.
And that was all those thoughts in one.
How about that? I love that. I love that story of, I will elevate you, auntie, no problem.
Yes.
Here it is. So you have your art, your work has taken you all over the world. You have exhibited at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, which I just happened to be at somewhat recently. That is an impressive museum. So congratulations having your work exhibited there. It is a place where the entire world's eyes are fixed to understand culture and to understand art. How do those platforms allow you to tell the story of Kenya? You talked about a moment ago about you were asking yourself, what is it to be Kenyan?
Yeah.
So when you take your stories, your art to a place like the V&A Museum, which has all the history behind it and all that complexity, what's the story maybe that you want to tell? Or what does that platform allow you to do with your art?
I think the V&A one was also one that I think when I was told it was happening, I was like, oh, okay. And then I got into the room and I actually immediately, I was like in tears. But it was because I studied fashion in the UK as well. And I remember going around the V&A, you'd be sent out and you're told, go and look for inspiration and learn more about fashion history.
Okay.
And yeah. Now I am here and I have a piece of work in this exhibit with other African designers. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder what it would have been like if I had done this then.
Yeah.
And I'd have walked into this room and seen all of these different aesthetics and interpretations and experiences and stories.
Yeah.
It would have been remarkable. So it was so heartwarming just to be a part of that exhibit and to be able to just show my work and in a way that I feel many have not sort of, I think in the global north, expected, because I think there was these narratives of before, it's not African enough, or there's this idea of what African fashion should look like. And it's not determined or dictated by those of us on the continent who are actually experiencing and have our own ideas and are creative minds just as individuals. So to be able to exhibit and to express my thoughts alongside other creatives is basically just that. We're able to tell our stories and show you different perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a powerful idea that I'm certain in the time that your exhibit was there were other students who did come through and see it and saw a reflection of either maybe something they didn't understand before or a reflection of something that was so familiar but had never seen in that context. And what a beautiful idea that there was a bit of a full circle there for you as a student and now as a teacher, which is what it feels like when you tell that story. Could you share an example or a story of a part of Kenyan culture that has really, influenced the way you see fashion? You talked about like the dinka, the corset, and that clean line. So without repeating, I guess, that question, I'm just trying to examine, when you're thinking about now, what is it to be Kenyan? Is there an example of your work that you could point to somebody who's never been here, maybe no one who doesn't know Kenya well, and say, this is what it is to be Kenyan?
That's a question I've asked myself multiple times. I think when I look at Kenyan fashion and how to explain it, and I think Kenyans as a people, I think we're very functional. I think Kenyans are extremely, extremely functional. It's one of those things where I know in art history we learned about then there was a Great Depression and then this influenced this style of aesthetic. And then, there was the Baroque and all of these things are a reflection of the society at the times. And I feel Kenyans are like that. It's because of the way our experiences and living in this space that we do, we are very functional people. The way we consume, you'll be like, oh, Kenyans will buy, I think, land, number one, priority. We save for land.
Yes.
We're always buying land.
Yes.
We're all telephone farmers.
Plots.
Yes, plots.
Like
Sorry,
we
plots.
love the plots.
Yes.
Plot not for sale, plot for sale.
Yeah, yes, land is like like how
that could be the name of a collection, plot for sale.
Don't joke with me. It might be the next one. Oh, I would love that. Actually, how would I explore that? But yes. But yeah, I think in the way we interact with society, it's like I almost don't want to stand out too much. I want to kind of fit in. But at the same time, there's functions and occasions where all of us should be standing out. So there's there's things like that where we're like very particular about the way we just look and communicate. And we're also not outspoken.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's a very different thing. When I have been to West Africa, and if you come here like bargaining in markets, what a different experience.
Completely. But it's at the same time, there's a firmness. It's just you have to understand the nuances. You're like, okay, I see. You're like, okay, let me look at you and then decide this is how much you want to pay. But then surely you've seen, and then they'll reason with you very functionally. They'll be like, but then living in Kenya is very expensive these days.
There's a self-respect there that is unnegotiable.
Exactly.
Non-negotiable. Yes. Yeah. So to take this art now into the places that you've gone, it requires some business acumen. As much as we celebrate artists and creators for who they are, if you then want to be who you are, So how have you mixed that creative brain and then the business side of you that has to sustain this business, to sustain this art?
That has been like one of the greatest challenges. It's like you have to be two different people at the same time. Particularly, I think, working as a creative. And then, fashion has both the art and the business. And it's an interesting one, particularly if you want to play on the global sort of platform. It's taken a lot of learning and unlearning, many very expensive mistakes.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's really important for creatives, young creatives, entrepreneurs to understand. There will be mistakes, and they might cost you. But what did you learn from that? What
you have to learn? You always have to learn. And I think I'm determined to make this work. Is the one thing, and I'm very very grateful to be where I am today. I mean, it's definitely not been easy. And I'm very grateful. I have a lot of mentors who have guided me through the process. I have an advisory board, none of whom actually work. Well, maybe kind of in the creative industry, but not really. They're all like very business minded, run very successful businesses. So I'm like, I have no idea what this is. And I go to them and they're like, this is kind of this. Maybe go and find somebody with this skill set to sort of help you and bring them on board on your business. And I'm like, oh, that was what the challenge or the shortage was. And you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not capable of doing everything by myself. But if I find the right people to sort of support me, then I'm in a good place.
It's possible.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's getting to that place that has allowed me to have a business. Yeah.
How did you find those mentors?
Conversations. You meet people, and I think I like people. I think I really like people. And so some of the conversations I've had with different individuals has made me realize, oh, I've never seen or thought of the world in that way. And I think I could benefit from it. So then I'm like, you, great value for what I need in my life. And that's kind of how I found them.
Interesting. And generally, when you ask people to step into this role, what's the response that you get?
All of it was amazing. All of them said yes immediately. I wrote them a very long letter, all of them, very, very detailed as to why it is I wanted them to sort of help me on my journey. And they were all they sent back resounding yeses. And I'm extremely privileged to have them with me. And it's one of those things where, if you don't ask, you don't know what the answer is going to be.
Indeed.
And it's also hard sometimes just to ask for help. Some people are just like, oh my God, I'm too afraid. Or maybe, do people even ask for help? Sometimes people are like, oh, maybe they just get that far without help. I'm like, nobody gets anywhere without help.
No one.
No one. Yeah.
No one. Anyway, I'm here, but yes, absolutely. No, I appreciate you saying that. I think in this industry, I think, again, what I love about Nairobi is you'll go to one market and you'll see 10 designers that you think, wow, that's amazing. Then you go, a couple months later, these pop-ups that they have, excuse me, and you'll see another set. And I'm like, it's just buzzing. The city is buzzing. And I'm sure behind every single one of those brands that's able to sustain is a team of people who have collaborated to get them there. And it's really part of actually our tradition and culture.
Exactly.
It's this Ubuntu-ness,
community.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the ethical and sustainable parts of your business. You are one of 3 businesses invited to join the Ethical Fashion Institute's Kenya Accelerator Program. That is a mouthful. Congratulations. What a wonderful recognition of your values. Tell me a little bit about what the ethical and sustainable practices are embedded into your brand and how you're able to sustain that.
It's extremely challenging. But I think one thing about that whole journey of me trying to figure out what it means to be Kenyan, ETC Africa, and all of those things. Now, obviously, I'm just determined to produce on the continent. So that one is a result of that. And obviously what that means is, particularly in a field that is not as, let's say, prominent, working in textiles, working in fashion from Kenya, it has meant that I'm not going to do things the way they're done everywhere else. How can I ensure it makes sense for myself and for the people that I work with? And as a result, I'm like, okay, Kenya does not really have a textile sector. How do we work with people to create fabrics? What does that look like? And then also not being so strict to that and being like, okay, but at the same time, Burkina Faso has a long-standing history and culture of working with woven textiles, similarly with Ethiopia. And I'm like, okay, I can also source from these regions, but also not forgetting that Kenya also, because it's home, has a very strong production facility, abilities and capabilities. How do I tie all of this into one and create beautiful things? And so it's been a lot of fun in that sometimes when you weave or when you're working with artisans, it can take forever. It can take, there was 1 year, I think 3 years, we were trying to work on a weave before we got it right. And then obviously because Kenya is not a cotton, not very strong in our cotton sector, we have to then wait for the farmers to have cotton sometimes. And then either they were importing from Zimbabwe and then the yield, they didn't come on time. And then I think over time we're like, oh, but then we forget Uganda also has cotton. So finding ways of getting all the different stakeholders to partner with each other to source, etc. It's been been fun. It takes long. And for me, it's worth it. It's as long as it's adding value, and it's making sure that those that contribute to the development of our collections, as you've said, it's not by myself. I mean, for me internally in my studio, we're 5, and then there's the weavers who do the handlooms. God knows how. I know in Burkina there are at least 300, and then there's also some in Ivory Coast, and then here I think there's like team probably has 25, 30 for the handlooms. And then there's the guys who actually farm in Uganda, who then are able to give the cotton to the spinners, who then send the thread to both the weavers here and the mills so that we can have the industrial cotton, which is this. So this is, I call it East African cotton in that it's cotton from Uganda, milled here in Kenya, printed. This is 100% East African.
Beautiful.
And I'm so proud of that. I won't even lie. And then you have the artisans who do the buttons. So these ones are done by hand, made from cow horn. I mean, because I'm determined to make it made here. This is a lot. That's my
It's
journey.
a story.
Yes,
I mean, I applaud you because it's a tremendous commitment. This ethical commitment comes at a cost.
Yeah.
Your clothes, you see it reflected in the price.
Yeah.
But what you're getting when you get a piece of your work is a story of weavers, of spinners, of artisans across the region and across the continent, which is really a powerful idea when we think about how much our continent is now starting to rely on, be it China, be it Russia behind China, be it whomever, and to have something that is truly ours is quite a disruptive principle to ascribe to.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think we should do it in all fields.
I could not agree with you more. Like you said, the challenges are real. That 3 years, I'm sure you felt, I felt every day of those 3 years.
Yeah, I think I even forgot at some point. I was like, are we still no, nothing? I'm like, okay, let's just put it at the back of our heads. It will happen one day.
Will come.
It will come.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about these collaborations. You mentioned a little bit of the pipeline of, how things come to be in a pair of pants, in a what was this called again? I've forgotten already.
Haweta bubu.
Haweta bubu. Haweta. Cha.
Yeah.
Haweta bubu. Is that Kiswahili?
No. That one is not even funny. So it's a name from an old collection. It's called Haweta is from Oromo.
Okay.
It's an Oromo word.
How about that?
Yeah.
And sadly, I don't speak Oromo. My people, I'm sorry. But, when you're working with these artisans, tell me a little bit about what the domino effect is. What does the economic outcomes look like for communities when you make these commitments to buy locally, when you make these commitments to wait 3 years for a weave to be finished? What is that domino effect economically for those communities?
I think it's remarkable. It's great. I think the only thing that you find is that we must then buy local, or at least find markets, because for us, it's a whole supply chain. With the success of that added value, we're all benefiting. And the money then stays here. Otherwise, what ends up happening is what I'm seeing a lot is that because you might be producing here and then not necessarily as a brand from here, the benefit is not necessarily fully absorbed by the communities. Because they then themselves don't actually realize that they are the reason.
Yeah.
This thing is as valuable as it is. And therefore, they're then able to also create and then add their own value in different ways. So it's both about learning, about exposure, and about income.
How is that learning going? When you look at the market and do you call them clients, customers, people who are watching and buying your work, from when you started to now, is that growing? Are we getting better? Are we understanding this buy local, build local kind of ethos?
I think we are. I definitely think we are. I remember I had a shop many years back in Karen, and it was a multi-brand store. And what it was is that I was like, I'm going to help other brands sell their product, locally made brands. And I remember we did it up, and it just looked like any store anywhere. So clients would walk in, buy stuff, and then later on, some would actually realize, sorry, this is made in Kenya. Or it's made, I'm like, yes, it's made by artisans or designers like myself. And they're like, they never imagined that kind of quality or design thinking would go into making product here. And so that was great. It was like a test. The guys were like, oh, okay. So we're like, you see, with or without knowing, it's just the way we present it, and therefore you're willing to purchase it.
Which is so fascinating to me, because there's so many times, I don't know if you've had this experience, where I will see something, let's go to like a Gap, right? Or H&M. And I'm like, this looks like something I see from Ethiopia. Like I'll see a pattern. Yes. I'm like, this is familiar to me, you know? It's happened to me over and over again over the years. So this idea of like, I didn't know we could get this in Kenya is so bizarre, because I'm thinking, but I see our work everywhere, replicated and appropriated all over the world all the time, What are your feelings around, this idea of cultural appropriation has kind of come up kind of part and parcel with this cancel culture idea, like you can't wear that, you can't say that, you can't call it that. But there's this beauty of, bringing in, an inspiration from a culture and weaving it into your work and your artistry. And I do that similarly in my work. So I'm curious, how do you feel about that? Who has the right to wear something or to call it Kenyan or to call it African? Do you feel like there should be some definitions around that?
I think for me, the challenge would be like, who's benefiting? So if you're borrowing references, let's say from, as you mentioned, from like the weave techniques in Ethiopia, and then it's woven in China, then that just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
That's that. I'm like, no, then at least it should have been made there. And therefore the communities that actually are known for that technique are actually benefiting from it, because that is why it is something of interest to you. Because somebody in Ethiopia made it. So don't then go and replicate it and then sell it as something that should be but isn't.
Yeah.
So I'm okay when the people who originated it benefited from the creation. From that perspective.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that, who benefits, because that's so true about every part of every industry. As you said, we should do it in every industry, and every industry has like a player and the played almost. There is a balance of power that is represented there, and how we engage with any industry. You were featured in Vogue France in 2022. Sorry, today my throat is not cooperating. In 2022, amongst 5 artists from the continent, 5 designers who were being celebrated. And what an honor, number one, just to be identified as one of 5. Congratulations again. What does that mean to you to be given that kind of authority, almost ambassadorship for such a broad and diverse place? What do you do with that opportunity?
I think it's just, for one, it's amazing and I'm grateful that it happened. But it's also just like showing you that, imagine now if there's 5, how many others there are on the continent? I mean, we're such a massive pool of brilliant creatives. So for me, it's like, okay, so now you've seen 5. Can you come back and look and see what else is happening? Because I feel like if I see this thing, okay, let's say, with when it comes to Nigerian brands, because there are so many that are so brilliant and talented, everyone is like, I want to see brands from Nigeria. Same with brands from South Africa. Now I'm like, okay, come and look at East Africa. So if you've seen that there's a few of us, just imagine how many else there are. And that way we will all benefit. So it's good. It's an entryway. Quite a gateway.
There's a theme definitely running in this conversation about the benefit and the community aspect and how important that is. One thing that I appreciate about your brand and that I've read about your work, that you really center also the female identity in your work, and that's important to you. Tell me more about that. Why is that important in your work?
I think it's also because as a creative, I ask myself lots of questions, and you find like if you have to explain something to somebody, do you even know who you are while you're trying to then have this conversation? And so I guess this is my interpretations or my perspectives of what it looks like. So you'll find, I think because of the way I've been raised or my ideas, I have almost a very modest kind of perspective on female dress. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, but then a lot of these pieces can be androgynous in their cut. And you know how you talk about like empowering sort of structures. And when you look at like the shift into tailoring and like pantsuits in fashion before. So I'm like, oh, this is one interesting way of doing it. I am like, I can create an identity or my ideology of my identity, which I guess as I identify as female, through my work. And that's why I sort of use it as you'll see it in my clothing and all these different interpretations. Yes.
You mentioned earlier some of the women in your life. I believe in your bio, it says you are also the daughter of a plant-loving psychologist who's your mom. And then you mentioned the aunties earlier. What have the women in your life taught you about fashion and what it's possible? What's possible from fashion?
The women in my life are just remarkable. I'm grateful. So are the men, but
shout out to the men too.
Yes,
we love the men too. We love the men too.
Yeah, I'm grateful for them all. But I think I spent a lot of time with my mom, with my grandmothers. I was one of those girls that was, the second they left the house, I'd be like, okay, where are we going? And they were the ones who left and did the most. The men would just be like, okay, we're chilling today. Whereas I was like, Mom, everyone is out the door. I'm like, I'm coming with you. So, they really had a lasting impact on my life. From just exposing me to the arts, one. So it meant that my grandmother with the crafts, my mom and her sisters would be like, okay, today we're going for a fashion show. Today we're going for an art exhibition. Today we're going, and it's amazing to have been exposed to all of these different experiences at such a young age, and to continually be interested and curious about this industry. It's a result of them. I'm grateful. Mummies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you been able to hear from those who kind of seen you come up? Like, what do they say about your work now?
They're always like amazed. They're like, you're still talented. And I'm like, what type of statement is that?
They keep you humble.
I swear they keep me humble. Those people, they definitely keep you humble. But they're also great supporters. They're like, what do you need? How do we help you? Do you know about this? Tons of articles. I'm happy.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, they're great supporters.
So what's next for Katush? What are you excited about in the next year or so?
Imagine we turn 10 this year.
Congratulations.
Asante.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
It's huge, but it's also like I realized, when did I realize? I think I realized in September. So that was 1 month into this this 10th year. Wow. And I was like, how is it we've gotten to 10 years and I'm only realizing now?
You've been working. You have been busy working. Yeah.
That was scary. It's scary and exciting all at the same time to realize that we're getting to 10. And then you're like, but then what have I done in 10 years? And when you're in that moment, you don't think about all the great opportunities you've had. You just think about, where was I trying to go? That's all I was thinking. Where is this ship going? And I'm like, oh, wait, this is what I thought my brand would look like in 10 years. So I've been spending the last few months saying, all those things I think I haven't done, can I do them before I get to 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, again, now back to business processes. things just tying up all these things so that I can spend the rest of our years even just enjoying creativity more.
Yeah.
And that freedom, so.
No big, fantastic show we can come to and some celebration.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yes, I know. I actually realized last week, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to wake up 2 weeks before 10 years.
Yeah.
And then be like, oh, it's 10 years. So I'm working on something.
We'll be watching closely.
Please do.
That will be the occasion to buy my second Katush.
Yes,
piece.
exactly. And I'm wearing it.
Yes. In fact, I've been eyeing, I have a very creative son, and there's a piece in your current collection, this pantsuit, a jumpsuit for men. So hot.
See, so I'm wearing.
It's not in red, so it's like in deeper, like a navies and whites. It was like, I saw the show that was in an industrial space.
Oh, that one. Oh my goodness. That's Guaride.
It is so gorgeous.
That one is very cool.
It's
the hand wovens. It's
something else.
Yeah, that one is inspired by an artist called Longinos.
Okay.
Yes.
So your inspiration is also coming from everywhere.
But across the continent. So I was like, one day I was like, okay, traditionally. Then I was like, wait, but then there's other artists who have also done their research.
Yeah.
And they have interesting interpretations. I can also work with them.
Do you give yourself like a creativity day where you're just kind of consuming art in all its forms to then keep your tank full of inspiration?
I don't know when it can happen. So, I don't think I can have a whole day where it's just to like constantly remember to do things that expose me to new ideas and to new artists or theories, but to my mind does not work in a way where I can say Monday, today, this is what we're doing. It refuses.
You're too creative for that kind of structure.
I really wish it would. I really wish it would. Yeah, but no. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we always like to ask our guests the same question before we let them go, because we love to see the connection between our teachers, our writers, our revolutionaries, our artists. There's always this common thread throughout humanity. And so, Katush, 2 questions for you. First, what's your favorite beverage?
I was like between hibiscus juice and tea, mixed tea, which I have a hate-love relationship with.
Mixed tea as in like masala tea.
Yeah, you know that one. That one. Yeah. So it's
why
like
the hate for that one?
Yeah, the sugar, the milk.
But you don't have to take it with sugar.
But I like the one that's cooked. When they cook it?
Yeah.
And then they always cook it with the sugar.
Yeah, it's true.
I can't be telling them. I want the one that has been made for everyone. That one.
That's a meal. That is like almost a meal.
Yes.
From my opinion, your cousin from the north, that's a meal. All that milk, all that sugar.
All of that milk. And it's like half part milk. And then I think it's even a quarter water and the rest is milk. It's my weakness,
Well, listen, there are worse things.
It's true.
There are worse things, yeah. And then we also love to know what is bringing you joy today?
Many things.
Your eyes lit up. That was so beautiful.
Yes, definitely my partner. I think at this point he needs husband.
No.
Yeah, but that phase, that relationship is very happy. Yeah.
That's what. Congratulations.
Asante.
You have a lot to celebrate.
I do. This year has been one of those things. Even my cat. I'm a cat woman.
There's a lot of guests who love cats around here. That's another theme.
That's a good story.
Every other person who sits in this chair loves cats.
Yeah? Cats are lovely.
They're having a moment. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need to remember, because like even, I know at the KSPCA, they have the cat orphanage. And even today as I opened my feed, I had friends playing with the kittens, and I was like, we need to do more to help.
You're a cat lady, Katush.
Yeah, I'm a full-on cat lady. I can't even lie. She brings me joy, but we have this thing where, because we don't speak the same language, so we fight as well. So I feel bad for her.
You don't fight with dogs. They're so loyal. They just love you all the time.
No, but cats love you too.
Do they though?
They do. She brings me gifts all the time.
Like what? Like little mice?
Today she brought me a bird.
See, that's what I'm saying.
And
did you want that bird?
No, I did not want that bird. But it was out of her love language. She was like, I love you so much. I will bring you a bird.
I'm glad you could see it as a gift.
I was terrified, but yes.
Exactly. I would have been like, you're out. That's it. That's where I draw the line.
No, you should just try, because they're nice.
Okay. So your cat, your partner, celebrations, joy around.
Yeah, family, friends. I think making time for all of these important people in my life has become where I find the most joy. So this year I've just been like, what are my friends doing? How are you doing? I've missed you. Yeah. Are you achieving your goals this year? I'll just check in and see. Okay. Yeah. And so those are awesome. Those are my things.
Well, your art and your work has certainly brought us so much joy. Wearing your beautiful dress, I feel joy. So thank you for all that you bring to us.
Asante.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Listeners, we would love to hear what you thought about today's conversation. Maybe you have some Katush in your wardrobe. Maybe you have some questions for her. Send us a DM at Selam Hello on all of our platforms. And if you still email, you can email us at selamandhello, or lily@selamandhello.com, or producer@selamandhello.com. And until we see you next, peace.
Worried, anxious group of people trying to move along. Maybe one day we'll get onto something. Until then, we say, hold on. I know it's hard, but baby, you just got to hold on. I know it's hard, but baby, you just got to hold on.